Now, closing out what has been one of the best years for hip-hop music in a very long time, we have gotten what is seemingly the last moment from Kendrick Lamar in what has been one of the greatest single-year runs we have ever seen from an MC, as on his fellow TDE member SZA's deluxe version of her 2022 album SOS Lana, which finally came out after so much hype and speculation. Kendrick Lamar has given us his second feature verse of the year on the track 30 for 30, and with this song, with some of the bars Kendrick is throwing out here, which in terms of what they are saying content-wise are surprisingly aggressive for an R&B cut, people are speculating that he is dissing Drake once again here, and when you actually look into the song's lyrics, with the way Kendrick is talking and really celebrating everything that has went down this year from him and his collaborators as a whole, and then also see the grand picture and references Kendrick is making, what Kendrick is doing here is not actually dissing Drake, but is just straight up trolling and making fun of him in one of the most hilarious ways we have seen. And once you realize what this feature is exactly alluding to, you're gonna see just how tapped in Kendrick Lamar is with everything that's going on. And now before we get any further into this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, it helps me out a ton. And so now with this new song from Kendrick and SZA, after Kendrick Lamar spent the entirety of 2024 rapping like not just the best rapper on the planet, but also the most competitive MC as well, who every time he stepped in the booth had to deliver a top-tier performance or people would have tried to discredit him. Here he knows that in this era, after all of the beef, which of course he was crowned the winner of in every single way possible, and with the release of his album GNX, which is breaking so many records and even after a month of sales, is still selling over 100K every week. All of this has more than proved that no rapper can even come close to what Kendrick is doing in this moment, and because of how far he is at the top, he can now lower the intensity and aggression down, and this is exactly what he does here. And overall on this cut 30 for 30, this is what allows for it to feel so refreshing and atmospheric even compared to the other Kendrick and SZA collabs on GNX. But even with Kendrick showing off his melodic side, which sounds more polished and refined than ever, he still manages to show that he is the most skilled rapper alive, but in a much different way, as through this melodic banger, Kendrick is still being as competitive as ever, as he is subtly alluding to Drake on this track and whoever else may have been tiptoeing around his name, but mainly is just taunting and really poking fun at Drake and the absolute mess his career is in right now as a whole. And this is what's so clever about this song, because if Gloria from GNX was the outro for Kendrick Lamar's 2024 run, 30 for 30 is the epilogue, where Kendrick is looking back on everything even further removed from these events and is just adding a whole entirely new perspective to it. And so when it comes to this lyrical performance and how it's just letting Drake quietly know that Kendrick is still seeing everything he's doing and is just laughing at him because of how humiliating it is. Before we even get to Kendrick's actual bars, with the song title itself 30 for 30, Drake has a song from What a Time to Be Alive called 30 for 30 Freestyle, and while when I saw people trying to connect this online, I thought it was just nothing. When you realize that this is the track from Drake where he is rapping about how the industry has come together to try and end his run at the top, and ever since Drake decided to go after his label, Not Like Us as a whole, and a lot of other major industry powers in his suit, this song has been referenced non-stop by OVO and his community as they seemingly think it was Drake predicting the future. This title seems to be very intentional on Kendrick's end, and again, even when he's making fun of Drake, when you remember the tone of this track is supposed to be very light and fun compared to everything else he has dropped this year. Kendrick is both trying to mock Drake and what he is doing within this moment in time, as he just pulled out the saddest and most pathetic move ever to try and change the narrative of a rap beef. And when in the hook of this track, Kendrick is repeating "I'm 30 for 30" over and over again, this seems like Kendrick's way of saying that it's not the industry who ended his reign, no matter how much he wants that to be so he can try to cope with the fact that he lost in the biggest rap beef of the century, but that it's actually just Kendrick who outplayed him in the beef. And now on the second verse of this track, Kendrick seems to send out another comedic jab Drake's way, which references some of the moments we all went crazy over earlier in this year when he says, "You F with that's thinking they cuter than you. Oh, say you on your cycle, but he on his period too." And this seems to be another jab at Drake, and also Kendrick's way of laughing at SZA for the run of songs she did with Drake back in 2023, and specifically the song and music video from RBD. As considering that this song with Drake and SZA was the more popular record that they did during the For All the Dogs era, and that Sexy Red was featured on this track, and considering how this bar seems to be an extension of the line from Euphoria about Drake standing next to her and what he thinks when he's doing that, all in all, this just seems like an extension of that all-time great line, and a way for Kendrick to playfully laugh at SZA for her little run that she had with Drake in 2023. which I'm sure now that looking back on these events, seeing Drake so playfully run alongside somebody who represents Top Dog Entertainment at its highest level and somebody who is so close with Kendrick definitely also pushed him to drop the verse he did on Like That in the first place. And now bringing this master performance in trolling full circle, on the outro of this song, Kendrick asked the chat if he should just go all out like he did this year one more time. And now of course by saying chat, Kendrick is not just asking the audience if they want to see more, but by specifically using the motif of a chat room. This really seems to be the full circle way of letting Drake know to stop looking like a clown the way he has been for months. Because we have seen Drake's all-time crash out since the beef nowhere more directly than on live streams. Because from the recent stream he was on where he just ranted the whole time about how rap was weird and how he only believes in the truth and not the fiction that Kendrick was saying to win the beef. And then throughout this entire stream, Drake just kept asking the chat what they wanted to see him do and say. To even when Drake jumped in a live stream chat and typed in custard to try and jump in on the viral meme regarding Kendrick Lamar's mustard line from TV Off. Overall, in this time where the lights are raising, Drake has been running around in chat rooms and seemingly hanging out with more streamers than he has rappers. So with Kendrick tying together this song by using the language that streamers use to communicate with their audience, this really all does seem to be intentional and Kendrick's way of just closing out this year with a fun performance that beyond these lines, celebrates and looks back at the dominance he has had over the entire field of hip-hop. But for Drake, in this time where he is dragging out this beef and its effects in a whole different way now, all of these lines that are connecting to Drake seem to be Kendrick's way of just responding to all of these current events going on within a manner that is not restarting the beef in a back and forth way, because we all know that for Kendrick, his job is over in that regard and he really doesn't need to diss Drake anymore because his career is already within a pathetic state. But even with that said, still, because of everything Drake is doing, and because of how crazy, ridiculous, and really pivotal to the future of the genre what Drake is doing right now as a whole is, Kendrick needed to acknowledge these things through some faint lyrical messaging, and the fact that Lamar was able to let us know that he has tapped into these current events and thinks that Drake is just as pathetic as the rest of us do, without even mentioning his name, and with the way Drake listens to music, unless somebody tells him, overall he'll probably never even find out. And tying these things together even further, when you look at the first lines Kendrick says on this track, which really call out all of his competition for the way they have been acting and how they actually can't compete with him in reality, every one of these bars just aligns with what Drake is doing, and maybe even other people who have been speaking about Kendrick as well negatively, which altogether just ties this track as a whole as being this grand statement to the entire rap game one last time from Kendrick, where he is telling everybody that no matter what they do, they are not on his level. And so now with all of this, when you put this amazing song in perspective with this moment in time, Kendrick has just ended 2024 with another masterclass in lyrical skill, and while some people may think this is all too cryptic, Kendrick has sent out subliminals like this through a lot of his career, and especially over the past few years, because leading up to this beef with Drake, while it was impossible to tell back then, knowing what we know now, the dual pair of verses Kendrick dropped in 2023 with both the Hillbillies with Baby Keem and on his remix he did from Beyonce's Renaissance album, were alluding and really predicting what was going to happen with Drake in 2024. Because from a verse where he was talking about somebody's career that didn't come with no insurance and that if it was gone, it wouldn't be able to be rebuilt, which was seemingly foreshadowing everything we saw in their back and forth, to the Hillbillies with Baby Keem, where Kendrick and Keem interpolated Drake's track Sticky from Honestly Nevermind. And while most people thought they were paying homage to Drake at the time, which now just sounds so ridiculous, they really were just mocking the low level of artistry Drake was bringing to the table, while at the same time showing that Kendrick can do what Drake does, but marginally better. And as the Hillbillies is a track that was beloved by fans and also Grammy nominated, and Sticky is a song that is seen as something that is slightly better than the horrible album it's from. Again, what they did really makes so much more sense now, seeing how Kendrick moved in 2024. So altogether, checking how this song mirrors the Kendrick verses that came before it, as they are not making Drake the focal point of the track, but are alluding to what was about to happen in the case of the earlier performances, and in the case of now what just happened, it's safe to say that Kendrick got the job done with what he was doing here, and beyond just lyrically humiliating Drake and everything he stands for. If Kendrick Lamar can now float this well over melodic songs, which from Luther to 3030 really is just showing us that he's elevating his entire craft and artistry to heights that we don't see for most rappers, period. With the events Kendrick and his team are preparing for the next year, if this is what the two artists who are about to go on an entire stadium tour can pull off, while we don't know what's going to follow after this era we have seen, we can more than expect that whatever is going to happen next is going to be nothing less than peak music. And so now with all of this said, let me know, what do you think about this new song from Kendrick Lamar and SZA, and do you believe that Kendrick was poking fun at Drake for the clown show that has been his career recently here? Or do you think this is all too vague? Now I can't wait to hear what you have to say, and if you made it to this point in the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, it helps me out a ton. And now if you want to see how right as Kendrick and SZA released this amazing musical moment, Drake's situation just got even worse because the music industry is starting to answer back to him and he can't handle the truth. Check out the suggested video.